All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, October 15th. And what a college football weekend we had last weekend. There's no Tom today. Tom's got some prior engagements, so we called Matt up to the big leagues. Matt, what's up, man? You've been very, very good with your picks, which is kind of very, very annoying. But you deserve the call up to the big leagues. So how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Coming off a pretty good week with the picks. So I'm ready to throw 5 more out whenever you are.
Yeah, well, we got a little bit of time to get there, but yes, Matt went 4-0-1 last week, which is incredible considering I thought I was well. First of all, I have to come out and say we made fun of you for your Vanderbilt pick. My Cincinnati Temple pick was not any better, so I take full responsibility of that. I will not make fun of you for probably a month about that, but then I'll come back to it. Or you're setting yourself up already because I saw your picks. You're setting yourself up for another embarrassment. But hey, if you're right, then I may just give up on the whole competition itself. But it's gonna be a little bit different show today, obviously. Not obviously, but we're gonna get into like a little bit of some of the meat. Like it's basically the middle of the season. You know, the biggest surprises, disappointments. Who would win the Heisman? We're going to defensive player of the year. Obviously, there's like the Nagurski, the Thorpe, but we're just going to go overall, maybe first half defensive player of the year. Talk about some predictions for the second half. Then we'll obviously get into our top 10s. We'll go over some of the big games. And then obviously at the end, we will do all our picks. So let's start with trivia. All right.
All right.
This one. These are both pretty tough. You're going to get tricked up, I think. Okay, this current 49er is the NCAA's all-time leader in punt return touchdowns with 9 at Washington. Who is he?
If it was – I remember hearing about this record when it happened.
It was relatively –
It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
I want to – was that like 2018 maybe? Just one of those seasons where Clemson was winning and everyone was just like, hey, we need a story to watch?
Kind of, I think, maybe. But
okay.
Yeah. No, he played in Washington. He's not very good in Madden, but that doesn't really help you, I'm sure. If you got no one, we can move along.
Yeah, I don't have anyone there. I remember hearing about that, so it's frustrating me that I'm not getting it because I know I'm going to know it when you say it.
Yeah, it's Dante Pettis at Washington. The other story I think that you may be thinking of, or maybe you haven't crossed up, or maybe you're right. I don't know. Ryan Switzer at North Carolina, he in 3 games back in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, 3 games in a row, he had a punt return touchdown and then he had 2 kickoff return touchdowns in that span of time. So he was always up there, but maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But yeah, Dante Pettis. I was a little surprised. I was very surprised. I was surprised.
Yeah, he was like a second round guy, I think.
Yeah, second or third. The Niners drafted him. I don't think he must have been at Washington that season when they did go to the playoff. Because Washington's never been a real story other than that. They just seem to get all these hometown Washington quarterbacks, and then they just end up sucking. Which I mean, the opening weekend, I have some FCS news later, but also now FCS, I covered the FCS exclusively last spring, obviously because I just didn't want to cover baseball. So I know all about that. Montana didn't even play last spring, so Washington got beat by a team that hadn't played in 2 years. So it was bad. But yeah, Dante Pettis. All right. The next one. This current Cleveland Brown is the NCAA's all-time leader in touchdowns responsible for. Who is he? Touchdown responsible for, running touchdowns, passing touchdowns. You get the gist.
So you said he plays on the Browns now?
Yes.
Okay. This feels lazy. But since it's touchdowns responsible for, that's such a specific wording of it. I don't see that being a running back or a wide receiver. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, a couple guys on that team were hot coming out of college, but none of them were really crazy like Baker Mayfield was. So that's the only guess I have.
You were very close. Baker Mayfield is second. The funny thing is, The Browns' backup quarterback, Case Keenum at Houston, is the all-time leader with 178.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I purposely put that in there to trick people because I saw them both at the top, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. But yeah, Keenum had 107. Keenum was an animal in college. He was like, that was Houston when like no one was really running the air raid, and Houston was. And yeah, had 178, and then Baker Mayfield had 175. So yeah,
Am I like
very
0 and
interesting.
6 on these trivia questions now?
What'd you
Like
say? I
I
didn't
have
hear the first part of it.
I think I'm like 0 and 6 on these trivia questions now. Like I am not showing up.
It's all right. It's all right. I mean, I kind of just handpick them in the morning, and just kind of go with it. Like I'll eventually go back to like regular trivia, but right now I'm just kind of like, 'cause I feel like you don't really look at like college football's all-time records list. Like maybe you look at the NFL's or something. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, so Matt Jacobowski, who will be on probably in the future with Matt as well, our other college football writer for Back Sports. He'll be on, but and then we might do our own thing with us three. But we pre-recorded last night kind of his mid-seasons and everything about that top 10s picks this week. So we're going to cut to him, and then after that, you'll come back to present time, and we'll be going right at it. All right. So here's me and Matt. All right. Everyone loved that, me and Matt. Matt had some interesting, obviously, top 10 prospects. I guess we could talk about that a little bit. I know but I heard it. And so he has 3 corners up in the top 10, which kind of surprised me. He's got Kaiir Elam. No, he's got Derek Stingley first, then Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, and then Kaiir Elam in 3. The only thing, I think Derek Stingley is very, very good. It just he hasn't been on the field for like 2. Like he had an incredible freshman season when they won the championship, and then after that, it was like he just has disappeared. So I don't know. Do you have a preference for any of those corners?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Elam has missed some serious time too.
Yeah, Elam's missed time, and I'll always say this about Florida DBs: they usually turn out well, except for Vernon Hargraves Jr. But they usually turn out well. But it's so hard to judge Florida corners at in the college level, just because Florida's always going to play an offensive style where they are going to be able to score points. And I think maybe but their scheme, like they must play a lot of zone coverage, I would think, and then maybe some man, but they're going to give up points. Their defense just isn't built to stop everyone right now. It's just how the offense is. But yeah, so yeah, Joe Hayden played for the Browns. I like Florida corners. But and then he had Kayvon Thibodeau as his first overall. I don't mind that. Evan Neal, I think, was up there. He did not have, so I'm not surprised. I wouldn't have 10 any in mine either, but he had no quarterbacks in his top 10, and his highest rated one was Carson Strong, which I think he'll come out, and I think he might be the number 1 guy, but who knows? But who was I thinking? Who was I just thinking of? So if you're an NFL team, what are you taking from Sam Howell's senior season? Because he looked great in his freshman and sophomore years. And he's looked terrible this year. Or not terrible, but he's been pretty bad. And I likened it, and sorry, I'll let you talk in a sec, but I likened Sam Howell to when he was playing his first 2 years, he was playing with a lot of talent around him, like a lot. Javonte Williams, Daz Newsome, those guys. And I think when he gets to the NFL, he's going to be also playing with that kind of talent as well. So I don't really expect this to, in fact, it probably has moved his stock down a little bit, but I still think he's the best quarterback in the draft. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I went into the season saying that he was going to be the best quarterback in the draft. I'm not 100% sure if I'm still there, but I think he's definitely like still within the top 3. I think what separates him from someone, say like Spencer Rattler, is what we believed about Sam Howell wasn't from recruiting. It was from, we had seen him on the field and knew what he could do. And there's not as many quarterbacks this year that we can say that about. Like Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I mean, before you get into, let's just get into that real quick because I think obviously we haven't really talked since we haven't done our podcast since last weekend, which is obviously, I mean, three of the best games all weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell it again. I told it the other day, the ending of the Mississippi or the Ole Miss Arkansas game and that hitting back to back with the Oklahoma scoring a touchdown to put the spread out of reach. Like I thought I got screwed earlier when Notre Dame beat Wisconsin by picking off all those passes in the third quarter and taking him to the house. Like that was a bad beat, and I was like shocked for a couple minutes. But so the Oklahoma Texas thing happens. Like Oklahoma is just going to run a ball one more time, get into field goal position. I got Texas 3.5. I'm totally good. And at the same time, basically, Ole Miss goes up 52-45. I'm like, oh my god. I think Ole Miss, like there was a minute left in that game, and then so basically. I see you texted the group and you were like, I told you about the Arkansas Ole Miss game. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like they just scored? Like, okay, it's exciting. I looked over at the score. It was 51-52. I'm like, oh my God. And then so I'm at that point, I'm like, all right, well, you know what? They're going to kick the field goal. I got 1 out of 2. I got the two biggest games at 500 in my book. So, but then of course, so in the Ole Miss one, I'm just hoping for overtime. I'm like, please go to overtime. Then it works. And then, of course, Arkansas tries to go for 2, doesn't get it. And then, like, I swear to God, 30 seconds later or 30 seconds before that, Oklahoma goes to uses a run and set up the field goal one more time, and the guy goes in the end zone. It was horrible. You obviously had a great gambling week or your picks week, but those two were very, very hard on me. But more into what we were talking about, Oklahoma. Caleb Williams, I think Caleb Williams has to be the guy going forward, correct?
100%. I don't see almost any scenario where he's not starting this week. But really quickly, on the note of that OU Texas game, I had come on here last week and I had preached to everybody they need to watch this Arkansas Ole Miss game. And even though I was right, I don't take a lot of pride in that because I could have said that about almost any game on last week's slate and been right. But so I had watched that game in its entirety. And then I switched over to the OU Texas game. And it was that exact moment you're talking about. They're going to run the ball. They're going to kick the field goal. I watched them run for the touchdown and immediately thought of you because I knew exactly what had just happened. And I knew I'd be hearing about it.
Yeah, keep going if you want to.
Yeah, but Caleb Williams is going to start.
Yeah, so I keep forgetting that we don't do I just do the NFL recaps on Monday. I keep it forgetting, so we can talk about some of the games from last weekend. I mean, we had 3 probably game of the year candidates last weekend, like you said, the OU Texas. But yeah, I agree. It's got to be Caleb Williams going forward. And the question that this arises is because you saw it in the Penn State Iowa game as well. I mean, if Sean Clifford doesn't go out of that Penn State game, Iowa game, Penn State I think cruises to like a 10, 12 point victory. And then we saw it with so I think it's going to be very hard now in college. I'm sure you've heard about this, but like with the transfer portal being what it is, it's going to be very hard to keep a reliable backup quarterback on your team.
Yeah.
I think the backup is going to in 2 or 3 years, you're not really going to have a backup except for, that 6th-year walk-on that just is like basically there to hold the clipboard and call the plays. Yes, which is, if you think about it, that's the reason Georgia is number 1. I mean, obviously, their defense is amazing, but their quarterback went down, and they had someone that could come in and game manage and fill. And Stetson Bennett's been better than a game manager. He's been very good. So that's one of the reasons Georgia is the best team is because no one really talks about it because it's JT Daniels. No one really expects Georgia to be an explosive offense, really, but they were able to go to their backup basically without like losing a step. And so my opinion is that in the next like 2 or 3 years, your backup, you're not really reliable backup, but your backup is going to be the freshman, whatever 4-star, 5-star freshman you just brought in. Because like I said, you saw that with Penn State too. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've talked a little bit here on the show about where I sit with backup quarterbacks and how you can either see a massive jump because nobody knows how this kid plays, what he's going to look like, And then sometimes that calms down, or sometimes when he starts getting those first team reps, he really takes off. I saw it posted somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. It was a little shady, but it was talking about Caleb Williams getting those first team reps. And so I think the product we see from Oklahoma this week against TCU is going to tell us everything we need to know about the rest of the season. I hate to say this. I think we're going to see Oklahoma kick into high gear, and I think we're going to see a much better Oklahoma team. I'll put it on the record that I don't want to see that. I have probably taken a little too much joy in keeping Oklahoma out of my top 10. But if they look good this week, I don't know if I can do it anymore.
My thing with Oklahoma is they're just going to Oklahoma at some point. Like Iowa's going to, well, I will say this, like everyone who's mad at Iowa and Cincinnati for being 2 and 3 in the rankings right now, like, well, you better buckle in because it's going to be the same thing for at least the next 2 weeks. And then Iowa may not lose to the Big Ten championship and Cincinnati may not lose. So it could be months that they're at 2 and 3 until the final selection. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Oklahoma's going to Oklahoma. I'm just praying that Oklahoma because I don't want them. I mean, I think it would be very interesting for Georgia to play a very like. Does Georgia play Ole Miss this year?
I don't believe they do.
See, I would love to they do play Florida in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll be at that game actually.
Oh, nice, sweet. That's awesome. What is it? The largest outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get rid of that name, but it's sticking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a bunch of college kids, so why not? So that will be interesting to me because I want to see if Georgia's defense can hold up against an explosive offense that maybe Alabama doesn't have, but a team like Florida might, or Ohio State would have, or Oklahoma. I still think Georgia will be just fine, honestly. But and that's why I just don't want Oklahoma to go into the 4 seed and just get absolutely their doors blown off again, because at that point, then you just can't put them in the playoffs again. And then one of the bigger things that I think arises is, okay, Spencer Rattler's out. I don't know if you saw, there was a couple of viral videos going on the weekend about him in high school just being a complete and total cocky prick and asshole. So, I mean, obviously that was when he was like 16, but whatever. But there's a good chance that Spencer Rattler, like he reads the tea leaves and he's like, okay, well, I need to quit the team now so I can figure out where I'm going next year. And then I think that will play a huge factor. Spencer Rattler leaves the team and is just full in on transferring, because then they don't have a backup, because Tanner Mordecai plays at SMU, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's gonna be very hard to keep a reliable backup anywhere. I mean, you look at the Ohio State situation this year. I mean, literally, obviously it's Michigan and Penn State and Michigan State. I would prefer CJ Stroud to play, but I mean, behind CJ Stroud, you got why can't I think of a stupid name? Well, you have Quinn Ewers, obviously, but then you have Jack Miller, and then Kyle McCord was the other one who came in for Stroud and did fine. So if Ohio State started to go down, I think they're good for this year, but next year, and this is my thing with Ohio State is, and I think we saw this happen with Georgia and Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. I don't think Ohio State can, now that Quinn Ewers reclassified to this year's class, so he's on campus this year, and CJ Stroud isn't available for the draft this year, I believe. I think it's going to be very hard for Ryan Day to start CJ Stroud again next year. Because if he does, there's a very good chance that Quinn Ewers walks. And that's exactly what happened to Justin Fields. It's not right, but I mean, it is what it is. And the funny thing with the backup quarterbacks now is we've seen 2 very good performances with Caleb Williams, and I don't know if you remember, Jackson Dart for USC came in and looked really good, and then somehow had knee surgery a week later. And then you've also seen it go horribly wrong with Penn State and Taquan Roberson. So I think that's it's going to be weird going forward. And then obviously the big one. What were your thoughts on the Alabama Texas A&M? To me, that one came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I almost didn't bother watching that game. I hate to admit it.
I didn't watch it till the fourth quarter.
And I had come back, and even down to like the last 5 minutes, I was like, this was cute, but Alabama's eventually going to hit the Jets and take off. And I just kept waiting for that to happen. And it wasn't happening. And there were, a couple drives there at the end where they looked good and they looked like they had it under control. And I remember once specifically, Alabama had scored and then forced like a 3-and-out for A&M. And I was like, okay, Alabama's doing their thing. Sure enough, you come back and Texas A&M's won the game. I don't see this being super different for the playoff picture. A lot of people are upset that Alabama isn't like outside of the top 10 now, because there's people who are just preying on their downfall. And I get that it's boring just to watch them win every year. But there are not, I think I have them at number 6. There's not 5 teams that I would pick to beat Alabama. There's not a chance.
Yeah. Oh, so I totally agree.
I think we need to cool the Jets a little bit. But definitely a little concerning, especially when it comes to Pete Golding. The Alabama fans have wanted him out for so long. And I've always been the party of, you know what, just give it a minute. I think you're overreacting. I don't know that I feel that way anymore. I think maybe he's got to go.
Yeah. Like I said, I saw it coming from nowhere. And that's the thing that maybe if there's one thing Alabama doesn't have this year is, you talked about it. Those last for like 5 minutes where you're like, okay, Alabama's just going to win. Like, Alabama's going to win. This was fun. Alabama's going to win. And they just didn't, whether it be the play calling, whether it be whatever it is, they didn't have the usual Alabama Nick Saban, all right, you were close, that was fun, but now we're going to stomp on your throat and it's over. So they may not have that this year. I still think the chances are very, very, very high that Alabama and Georgia both get in. Especially if even if Georgia beats Alabama, I think Alabama will still have a shot. Depending on what else happens, I don't think they'll get in, but it's very possible. But yeah, that came out of nowhere with Alabama, and you look at A&M now, and we were talking about backup quarterbacks. Matt Calzada had somehow out of nowhere showed he knew how to play football, and he pulls off probably the biggest win for Texas A&M since Johnny Manziel was there when they beat Alabama. And they have I can't think of Jackson Hayes or Kings Hayes or something like that. He was the starter in the beginning of the season, and now he's been injured. Like, he can't come back in and start after this guy just beat Alabama, right?
Yeah. No, I don't see any return. Haynes King. I don't see any way he comes back and gets that starting job from Calzada by this point.
Yeah.
And it was looking dire in the beginning, but like I said, sometimes you fizzle out and sometimes you get those first team reps and you get better.
And like, I'll say this, I have two last things to say about that game. Like, I give Matt Calzada that took balls, because you saw him get hurt. He came off, went in the tent, and whether this is right or wrong, Jimbo was probably like, dude, I don't care if you can't throw the ball. You have to go in the game. We cannot put in this 60-year walk-on when we're about to play Alabama. So he gets hurt. He comes back in, and I think they threw a touchdown or whatever. And then obviously the biggest, I think the momentum changer the momentum changer that kept momentum on the A&M side was when Alabama scored, and I think they brought it down to 7. I think it was the third quarter or middle of the third quarter, and then that kick return where they went back up by 2 touchdowns, and you were like, it goes into the fourth quarter, they're down by 2 touchdowns. You're like, okay, this could be it. But yeah, and also just about Texas A&M in general, I don't know what you think about them. Like, let's just not talk about Texas A&M, the school, anymore, because they are very, very weird. Like, it's almost like a cult. Like, I don't know if you saw the videos of like the Yellow Leaders or whatever they're called, like in the stadium the night before, and like, oh, Mississippi State doesn't have play. Like, they're just very weird. They do the whole like military thing. Like, I was in the military, I get it, but like, they're weird. They're like a cult to me. So as long as I don't have to think about them in like real life, and I can think about them as a football team, that's fine. But they're a weird cult, and like, let's just not talk about them, because who knows what goes on there. All right, but let's get into some of our mid-season things. I guess we'll start out with no. Okay, so it's biggest surprise, good or bad team, but not bad. Biggest surprise, good way for a team this year so far. Who would you give it like the award at mid-season?
For me, it's either going to be Penn State or Michigan. Penn State is coming off of a terrible, terrible, terrible 2020 season. And I was one of the guys who said, I hope they click again, but I'm not sure if they will. Thankfully for Penn State fans, they did. So they're definitely up there. I think Michigan as well. I feel like they re-signed Jim Harbaugh. And once he was re-signed, I kind of went, okay, so Michigan, they're like a 10 to 15 for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't know, maybe a little bit outside 20. And they've been very surprising as well. Those are the good surprises. I think the bad one is probably Oklahoma.
Really? Even though they're undefeated? I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but
I don't think many Oklahoma fans were happy with the way this team looked up until last week. So
I'm going to stick in the Big Ten with my biggest surprise. It's either Iowa. It could be Iowa, but I'm kind of putting it. Michigan State being 6-0 is crazy. Mel Tucker came in and over the summer they brought in 20 transfers. He changed the whole culture there. Obviously, which was a terrible culture. Even under D'Antonio, his players were getting in trouble. There were rumors and things like that. And on top of that, you had the whole gymnastics thing going on. So he came in and changed that whole culture there. I mean, I have more Michigan State to talk about shortly, but I'll get into that when I get into that. And then I think the biggest disappointment, I mean, I see what you mean with Oklahoma. I mean, they're undefeated, but some of their fans probably aren't happy. You're correct. The biggest disappointment has been Clemson. It's even at the point now where, in the beginning, I kind of thought it's not DJ's fault. They don't have anything around him. And they don't. He doesn't have anything around him. But I'm also not so turning on the TV tomorrow to watch. Who was I just talking about?
Clemson.
Oh, it's crazy that DJ. I'll turn on Saturday, watch DJ. Even if he plays okay, it's not the same DJ Uiagalelei that played against Notre Dame last year and almost won them the game. I don't know how these are the same people. It's been very bad for Clemson, and I could not be happier. So that's good. I don't like Dabo. And then disappointment. I did do my disappointment. 3 Heisman finalists, and then the winner. If you had to give it out right now.
Yeah. Also, just really quickly on hindsight, I think we should do an honorable mention of North Carolina for the disappointments. I don't know how Clemson slipped my mind, but as soon as you said that, my mind went to North Carolina as well.
And they lost to Florida State last week too.
That's tough.
Mac Brown has never beaten Florida State.
Really?
It's one of his only. Even at Texas, everything, he's never beaten Florida State ever.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know what it is about him, but he clearly has an issue with him. I don't know.
That's just so funny to me. But so Heisman, I think I like Kenneth Walker right now. The more I look at it, the more I like it. Every week we say this, but every week I think it's more likely that we see a non-quarterback. If it were to be a quarterback, I still like Matt Corral, even as a guy who I didn't want to like coming into this season. I think Travion Henderson also gets a mention. We'll see how that pans out. I don't feel as good about that pick as the other two. If I had to give it out today, it'd be Matt Corral, but I think by the end of the season, it very well could be Kenneth Walker.
See, I get what you're saying. I think it's kind of mixed around. If I was to give out the award today, I'm giving it to Kenneth Walker. My 3 finalists would be probably Kenneth Walker, Bryce Young, and I think I would go with Desmond Ridder. He doesn't have the eye-popping numbers, but what he's been able to do at Cincinnati to keep that team alive, some of the games they should have lost, he's been very good. If anything, I think Matt Corral rises up in the second half, but he might not. I don't know. I don't know what their schedule is. And then I think maybe Kenneth Gainwell falls down, which is very, very possible. Not Kenneth Gainwell. I'm thinking of NFL. Kenneth Walker. But because there's a chance. I mean, they go through a gauntlet of, I think, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, like in 3 straight weeks. So, which is also could be the opposite. If Michigan, so that those 3 teams, if they beat 2 of them and Walker has a good game in 3 of them, I think he's solidified as definitely a contender. I don't think Desmond Ritter will win it, but I would put him in there now just because of where Cincinnati is. And then Matt Corral I like a lot as well, but I just think you have to give it to Bryce Young from Alabama. One of the other guys that it's crazy. Do you know who's leading the college football in QBR this year?
I do not.
Kenny Pickett at Pitt is having an insane year. Like he needs to be mentioned in the Heisman conversation. I think he's thrown 1 interception all year. And Pitt lost, I think they've lost twice, but one of their losses was to like a MAC team. I'm pretty sure Western Michigan or Eastern or Central Michigan, maybe. But had they not lost that, I think he would be in the conversation. Yeah, definitely look up Kenny Pickett's stats after this. It's so weird because last year at Pitt and like where every year that I've heard his name, he's just a game manager. But for whatever reason, this year he is very, very good. And there's a very good chance that if he keeps playing like he does, I mean, the ACC is wide open. Like no one knows what's going to happen in the ACC. So if they stick around and Kenny Pickett sticks around, I think that would be he would have to be mentioned up there, in my opinion. But yeah. All right, what do we get next? The defensive player of the year, or a couple names if you want to throw them out. Yeah, anything like that.
I see the Georgia fans screaming for Jordan Davis.
His name's Jordan Davis. I thought it was Tyler Davis. Okay, I was wrong. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to say I hear you, and I don't agree. I think he is a big time. He's a lot better than his stats say. I don't know that he's the defensive player of the year. I actually really liked Will Anderson for a little bit. Feel a little differently after what we just saw. If Alabama can kind of regain that step down the stretch and do something impressive defensively, I'm a big Will Anderson guy. And oh my gosh, I always forget his name. The other linebacker there at Alabama, Henry Choto.
Yeah,
ish, something like that.
Yeah, you know better than I do. I don't know.
I'm sorry, you cut.
You're up. Go ahead. Keep going.
You
got me.
Elsewhere, defensive player of the year. I mean, there just aren't as many guys that I love, and we're seeing some really good defenses, but I don't know that we're seeing the standout players to that extent this year. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree. It sucks that there's not a defensive guy this year because it would be a perfect year for someone to win. Like this is a year where Chase Young wins the Heisman. This is a year where, even though I thought it was overrated, and I still think he probably wouldn't win it even this year, but like a guy like Jabril Peppers, like who does the returns and everything like that. But yeah, no, it sucks. But if I had to go with defensive player of the year right now, and I agree with what you say about Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis just doesn't like. He is a monster and he is a beast, and he might be the most important player on that Georgia defense. He just doesn't play a glorified position. He's there to like basically make sure he gets double teamed so the linebackers can fill and make tackles. That's just a part of what Georgia's defense is. I mean, we saw it 15 years ago, but it was different because Ndamukong Suh for Nebraska, like he was really good, but he was also getting sacks, like multiple sacks every game. And Jordan Davis is literally there in a 3-4 defense to just shed blocks and stop the run. I think I would have to give it to Riley Moss from Iowa. 4 interceptions already this year, 2 of them being pick sixes. Every week I come into the weekend saying like this can't hold up. Like that Iowa just can't be turning over these people so much. Like, it's just, there's no way this sticks. And every week I'm surprised when Riley Moss ends up with another interception. So I think I would give it to Riley Moss. And that's another person that if he returned kicks or if he was an athlete, maybe, played some receiver points, but that really doesn't happen anymore. So, but yeah, there's a lot of good defensive players this year. If anything, it's the year of defense kind of being back. So,
which we needed after last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then kind of what we did earlier, biggest surprise and biggest disappointment player-wise.
I think right off the bat, this is kind of more of an honorable mention than anything because he's fallen off a lot of the radars. We've all forgotten the Anthony Richardson story, which was very exciting. The backup quarterback for Florida. I see a lot of people, and I almost brought up earlier when you were talking about these transfer quarterbacks. I see these people pulling their hair out and losing their minds, saying, "Hey, if we don't start this kid, he's going to transfer. He's going to go somewhere else." The kid grew up in Gainesville. He went to, I think it's literally called Gainesville High School. Lived in that city for years. He's not leaving the program anytime soon. He's someone I'm really looking forward to seeing. I still think Emory Jones makes perfect sense for him to be the starter. I hate seeing people complain about that. But as far as the guy who just showed up this year, that wasn't in anybody's preseason notes, and then was just insane the first couple times you put him in. That being said, he's a little more highlight factor than someone who's going to go and win games. As far as that concerns, I mean, Bryce Young, I still say to an extent that I was surprised. I think we're forgetting that he had the best debut of any Alabama quarterback. And it's easy to just reload talent there. But I remember watching the 2019 Iron Bowl going, I don't know what Mac Jones is going to look like next season. And then he was lucky to take off. And now we've got Bryce Young coming off the bench. You never know if they're going to be able to reload like that. So for me, I was surprised.
I got you.
But I understand he's the highest hyped recruit ever. So maybe him being good isn't crazy.
That's true. I have a couple in mind for biggest disappointment. Obviously Sam Howell's in there, but I don't blame it all on him. But Sam Howell's in there for me. There are a couple other players. Honestly, all the quarterbacks that we thought coming into the year that were going to be good, other than basically Bryce Young, have been as a total pretty bad. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of quarterbacks that they just aren't doing it for me. I will also say I've been after Oregon beat Ohio State. I thought they had a lot of momentum, and obviously CJ Verdell's out now, and that sucks. And Oregon's going to lose maybe one or two more. But Kayvon Thibodeau, I just haven't heard a ton about him, and it is also biased because he is on the West Coast, and whether Easterners, everyone who's not in the Western time zone, you just have to understand that we don't know the Western time zone that well because those games come on at 10:30 on a Saturday night when we're already done with all of our games. You know what I mean? It sucks, but that's just what it is. I think Christian McCaffrey could have easily won the Heisman when I think he was second place or third place, but nobody just watched him. And then the only reason Reggie Bush won was because that team was Matt Leinart, Pete Carroll, and Reggie Bush. They were almost like the first college superstars that were popular no matter, they were popular throughout the country. But them and the quarterbacks, but Kayvon Thibodeau and Justin Flo, I don't know if he's still hurt. I just don't hear anything about the West Coast unless I bet on them, which is why I bet on Arizona State a lot because I love Arizona State. The biggest surprise, I'm going to go to Alabama as well. Biggest surprise who's been good. Jameson Williams, is that his name?
Yeah.
Jameson Williams, transfer from Ohio State. It's a surprise because I think Nick Saban's good, and I always thought Jameson Williams was going to be just almost like a Henry Ruggs, go deep. But he's improved his all-around game, and it shouldn't surprise me. But it does because he wasn't even in the rotation at Ohio State, which says something about Ohio State's receivers, yes. But he really wasn't even in the rotation. He caught a touchdown in the semifinals last year. I think that was the only touchdown he caught. And then he just enters the transfer portal and goes to Alabama and other than Menchie, but I think he's been not other than Menchie. I think James Williams has been their best receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So surprising, kind of not surprising, but at the same time, it's like, how can this guy be so good at Alabama when at Ohio State he couldn't crack lineup? Granted, if you give Alabama Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, I mean, they're probably the best team in the world. So who knows? But yeah, those are my two. And then Coach of the Year at the halfway point.
Listen, I feel like every time I've opened my mouth today, I've talked about the SEC, and I try not to do that when I come on here.
No, there's absolutely
I don't see any reason.
That's why we love you, is because you talk about the SEC. It's great. That's why we love you.
I can't see going anybody here besides Sam Pittman. And I feel like Arkansas is getting a little bit forgotten about right now. And I just want to talk about this. And I want to tell the Arkansas fans that we hear them, because what I'm seeing happen, they had a 4-game stretch of Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, and now they've got Auburn. None of those games at home, by the way, I don't think. So, yeah, they might come out of this, what would it be, like 4-3 maybe at the worst by this point if they lose to Auburn, which I don't think they'll do. But this team is getting beat down right now, and they are competitive every week. I know a lot of people didn't like the showing against Georgia. I understand that.
I mean, what are you going to do? Like, anyone who says that, I mean, obviously we won't know until the end of the season or whatever. I mean, Georgia's one of the best defense, in my opinion, because I can't, like, the Alabama defense of the past and some of the LSU defense, I think this Georgia defense is the best we've seen since 2000, like the year 2000, 21 years ago.
I agree wholeheartedly. And, I know that Ole Miss lost by 3 touchdowns to Alabama. So maybe a 1-point game for Arkansas wasn't as big of a deal. But I don't know how many teams in the country are going to seriously trade points with Ole Miss. Not very many. So I don't see any reason for us to write Arkansas off the radar. Obviously not a playoff team this year, but you don't have to be a playoff team to be worth watching. And I think Sam Pittman has just done a lot of really great things with that program. I was not a fan of the hire when it happened. And now I'm sure there's people who have just heard me talk or read what I've written who are convinced that I'm an Arkansas fan because I just love everything this team is doing.
No, I completely agree with what you're saying. There was a very good chance that after they lost these last 2, or even the first one that they lost, or like the Georgia loss, that Sam Pittman could have lost that locker room, and those guys would have just been giving up. And you know what? If that happened at Arkansas, you know what? I don't think you would blame Sam Pittman. I think you'd be like, that happens in the SEC. You think you had a good start, and you don't, and you kind of lose some guys. Like, their heads aren't really focused. But he's done an incredible job of, first of all, recruiting and keeping talent in state, which Arkansas is usually pretty good at, but he's done very well at it because I went back and looked. But yeah, no, I agree. He's been awesome. Just quick before I get into mine, I was just thinking about it. Like, obviously, what would you set the over at Ole Miss, Ohio State? Like 100? I legitimately think it could be like a 72-63 game. Like, neither one of those teams play defense. Like, maybe Ohio State gets 1 stop. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like, Ole Miss definitely isn't stopping Ohio State. I mean, I don't want to rag on Ole Miss, but that last drive that they gave up to Arkansas, it honestly looked like the defenders, like, they didn't want to play football. Mm-hmm. They looked horrible. So, but I do think over under Ohio State Ole Miss, like, that would be one of the hot. I mean, I think there was a point in the Oklahoma-Texas game last weekend where I do think the live over hit 100. But yeah, that was crazy. But my coach of the year, and this is just staying true to form. You go SEC, I'll go Big Ten. Mel Tucker, like I said, just incredible, changing that culture there. I don't think anybody had Michigan State like anywhere near the top of the leaderboard in the Big Ten to begin the year. Like I said, he changed the culture. He brought in Kenneth Walker's been huge. And the only problem is with Michigan State going forward is if someone puts 8 in the box, is if their quarterback can throw them out of it. In the past, he hasn't been able to, so we'll see once Michigan State plays some real teams this year. But so far, it has to be Mel Tucker, in my opinion. He, like I said, I mean, obviously, what has been going on at Michigan State, with the gymnastic things, it's on the same level as Penn State too, as well. But then even on the side of D'Antonio, where things are coming out about players knowing things and being bad guys and things like that. So I think he's done a very good job there. And it also would not surprise me if they fall heavily in the second half, or Mel Tucker decides, or they finish very well, like, I don't know, 9-2, 10-1, something like that. And he gets poached off by USC. Would not surprise me. But that's also thinking that Urban Meyer is going to go there, which every Monday morning that I don't see Urban Meyer's not at USC, I'm like, okay, it'll be next week then. That's fine. But whatever. I put this in here. I don't really have 2 second half predictions. Do you have any predictions for the second half? Like 2 takes maybe? If not, we can just move through it.
I don't, but with the space, there's something I saw that I'd like to bring up if you're interested.
Go ahead.
Which is, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I essentially saw a scenario where Alabama wins out, goes to the SEC championship game. Kentucky goes undefeated. I know I might have lost you already. Kentucky goes undefeated, loses to Alabama in the championship game. Georgia, their only loss is to Kentucky, miss the SEC championship game. What do you do with those 3? Well, you'd have 2 12-1 teams and an 11-1 team. It's kind of a loaded question. I apologize, but
no, because I mean, realistically, like not realistically, like in a real world, like I would take probably just Kentucky out of the scenario, but I mean. In this, I mean, the committee just wouldn't let 3 SEC teams in. Like, they couldn't. They would have to make a choice, which then makes me think that both of them are out. One of them's in and both of them are out, because I feel like that's the only the fair way you could do it. Because I have another scenario to go along with that one you said. Everything stays as is. Obviously, Oklahoma loses a game, but like Georgia wins out. Ohio State wins out, Cincinnati wins out, Oregon wins out, Oklahoma wins out. So you'd think maybe Cincinnati is the odd man out, but then you look at Oregon and Ohio State at that point in time. I'm thinking Ohio State at that point in time is going to be a lot better than Oregon, in my opinion, like just from the season. But then you run into the question, can you put Ohio State in over Oregon, even from a head-to-head, which I think they would, but it's question mark. The more plausible scenario I would see out of that situation would then be Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Oklahoma, and they just leave Cincinnati completely out. I think that's very possible. Once again, and with the loss of CJ Verdell for Oregon for the rest of the year, I think they're gonna lose again. And even if they don't, I think the committee will take that into effect, because they've been shown to do that in the past. So I think they would take that into effect and be like, okay, Ohio State's obviously better now. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you remember about the 2007 season. It was the greatest season of my life. I was a young, I don't know, maybe I was in 8th grade or freshman. I don't know. But all the upsets, it was crazy. It was awesome. This has all the markings of, I mean, the Big Ten gauntlet coming down, and I think not this week or next week, but after that, you have like 3 weekends in a row of Ohio State versus Penn State, then like Ohio State for Michigan State, then you have Michigan State. So there's going to be a 3-week gauntlet where we're going to find out who is coming from the Big Ten. Well, not who's coming from the Big Ten, who's going to take on Iowa in the Big Ten championship. And at this point, like, I like Ohio State, but I would love to see Iowa in the playoffs. Like, I don't know what their fans do. Like, do they rent trailers and just go? Like, I have no idea. I think it would be awesome if they did it. I don't know if you remember, but the last time Iowa was in a big game, I hope you remember, Iowa was in a big game was when they played Michigan State in the Big Ten Championship like 5 or 6 years ago. And that last drive they gave up to Michigan State, where I think it was a 9-minute drive. There was 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was a 9-minute drive where Michigan State ran the ball every single play. And you just saw it happening in front of your face. And you just felt so bad for Iowa fans because you're like, there's nothing they can do about this. They're just going to keep running for 4 yards every play, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, but I really loved it. At this point, like I'm all in for Georgia, Cincinnati, Iowa, and give me Oregon too. And then, I mean, Georgia would kill all three of them, but I don't know. I'm all in for complete and utter anarchy. Love it.
Well, I think you're right in that if it gets too crowded at the top, Cincinnati's going to get screwed.
Yeah, which is bullshit in my opinion. It shouldn't be that way, but yes, I think Cincinnati's the odd man out. And then I think they'll come up with themselves for a good reasoning. They'll be like, well, Oregon and Ohio State have better resumes, and they have one law, blah 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 blah. So the more I think Cincinnati looks good going forward. Like I thought they looked after they beat Notre Dame, I was like, okay, they're clear, they're good. Like they're good. I think they're good. And then I didn't realize the chaos that was going to happen. The more and more time goes on, I think Cincinnati's chances get weaker and weaker. Okay, we're not going to do a national championship, and we're not going to do the biggest disappointment second half or the surprise second half. But at the end of the year, I would like to take this on record. Who do you think will be the 4 in? I'm not talking about who you want or what your thoughts are. Who do you think the college football playoff is going to put in the playoff?
I'm going to start with Georgia. Do these have to be in a particular order?
No.
Okay. So people aren't going to like this, but I have Georgia and Alabama, I think they could both find a way in. Beyond that, probably Iowa and Ohio State is where I'm going to sit.
Okay, I'm going to pause you there. You can't pick Iowa and Ohio State because one of them will have one loss, or one of them's going to win the Big Ten championship.
Oh, I apologize.
So you got Georgia, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me not do that.
Or Ohio State.
You know what? Let me look at my rankings and get back to you for 1 second.
Okay, that's fine. Hey, no worries.
You tell me who you've got.
Right now, I completely agree. I think it's Nick Saban. He rarely loses in the regular season. There's no way he loses twice in the season to two SEC teams, I don't think. So I think they end up beating Georgia in the SEC championship game. And I think that I think they would put Alabama 1 and then Georgia 4, which either way, well, no, they wouldn't. They would probably put them 1 and 2. You know what? The best thing would probably be to put them 1 and 2 because then they don't have to play each other. So I would put them 1 and 2 because you can't really say who's better, who's not better because Alabama lost to A&M, but Georgia lost to Alabama. So I think that works out. I think they're both in there. And then I think Oklahoma's going to Oklahoma. And I think Ohio State's in from the Big Ten. I don't think the ACC is giving anybody. I think Oregon's going to lose again. And unfortunately, then I think they go with Cincinnati. And the biggest problem you're going to have there is, well, no, if they're 1-2, that's fine. But the biggest problem you're going to have with that being the Final Four is it's just going to be SEC in Ohio, like the state of Ohio. It's going to be the SEC in the state of Ohio. So it's hard for me to imagine that. But if everything I think will happen, like I do think Oregon will lose again. I do think Oklahoma loses. Now, they could lose like next week or the week after, come back and win the Big 12 championship and then jump Cincinnati, which I think they would do. But I think Oklahoma might lose 1 or 2 more games. And without Verdell, there's no way Oregon doesn't lose another game. So I think at that point, the committee's just got to be hoping for Iowa, I guess. I don't know. That's a scenario where I think it will happen, and I have absolutely no idea what they'll do.
Yeah. Looking back on this, I feel bored. You kind of hinted at this for a minute, and then you got away from it. But I think, and again, in no particular order, I think we see Georgia and Alabama. I think we see Ohio State, and I feel so boring, and I hate myself for picking this, but I think we see Oklahoma. That if you had told me that in the beginning of this season, I would have guessed that this could be one of the most boring football seasons we've ever seen, and that's not true at all. But I think we're going to see Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Oklahoma.
I like if you were to give me betting odds, like I had to bet like I don't know 100K on one, I would probably go with yours. I'm not really trying to be the devil's advocate, or this isn't like what I want because I don't think it sells well, but I just have to go against the grain. I'll go against the grain, but I mean I think that scenario is more likely than mine, just because then you open it up to the rest of the country. But I do think I think the committee is going to have to make probably at the end of the year, if these things keep going like they are and just crazy things happen, they're going to have the toughest decision to make since the first playoff when they kept TCU and I think Oklahoma as well, or maybe not. Oh, Baylor, TCU and Baylor out in favor of Ohio State, who got in because they blanked Wisconsin 63-0 in the Big Ten championship game. Also, back to my other point about Cincinnati, not my other point, back to this real quick. I also forgot, and this is true. I think everyone needs to know this. Betting wise going forward, Cincinnati's going to need style points. They're going to need style points. Like I mean, I don't necessarily know if they did it on purpose last week, or maybe Temple was just that bad and I'm an idiot, whatever. But they are going to need style points to get in. So, and Luke Fickell, I don't think he really gives a rat's ass if he runs it up on some teams, because this is going to be the best chance since we've had Boise State back in those days of making the championship. So I think it's the second half of the season. The 3-week gauntlet in the Big Ten is where I'm marking down. This is where I come back in the competition because they're all going to be Big Ten games. So I will take the lead there around that time over you. And also, it's just going to be awesome. It's just going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm so excited for it. But that's pretty much our review for the second half. We're getting into our top 10s now, and then we into games and our picks. Try and speed this up. People have things to do today. I know. All right. Let's go with your top 10 first. I think most of the ones I've seen have been pretty not off the beaten path. So, yeah, just go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just throw them out quick. Georgia at number 1. I'm glad I finally got to do that without really having to wrestle with it. That pick was made easy for me this week, and I'm very grateful for that. Number 2, Iowa. It speaks for itself. I don't know that I've seen anybody who doesn't have Iowa at number 2. Number 3, Ohio State. I had them make a big jump after beating Maryland 66-17.
Yep.
Some of that was maybe just correction for knocking them a little lower than I probably should have. But I think they're right back where they belong. Number 4, Cincinnati. I did not love their game against Notre Dame, to be honest. I get that they went out there, got a win against not a Power 5 opponent, but someone who's viewed as like a Power 5. But I had Ohio State jump them. It is what it is. Next, number 5, I have Penn State. Most people dropped them lower. If you have to put in your backup quarterback when you're leading, 17-3? Or no. The backup came in later, but at a point in the game, they were 17-3.
I think they had a 14-point lead, and then the backup came in. I think.
Okay,
yeah,
that was when
right.
he came in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you lose by 3 points to the number 2 team in the country. That's not super punishable, in my opinion. So they went down 1 spot. Number 6, I have Alabama. They went down 5. I'm sick of talking about Alabama. It's all we've done all week. They're going to be just fine.
No way. Really? No way. I never expected that from a Nick Saban coach team. Never. I thought they'd just fold right now. Season's over.
7, Michigan State, still undefeated. They beat Rutgers 31-13. I might choose to talk about this later.
Okay.
I will. Okay. I'm not going to talk about it right now. I have a couple feelings about their game this week. When we get to the picks, I'll talk about that. Number 8, I've got Oregon. They did not change at all from the week before. I was open to like moving them if they got jumped and they had to kind of be adjusted, but they just kind of worked out to be in the same spot that they are. Number 9, I have Kentucky. I'm very high on Kentucky. And the thing about Kentucky, I hear people use this analogy, and most of the time it rolls my eyes, but now I'm going to use it. If you took off the logo and they all wore the same uniforms, you would not be able to tell this Kentucky team apart from a lot of really good teams that have been built over time. I understand it feels like a strange adjustment for us to go Kentucky's a top 10 team. But if we can get over just the way that feels, I think people will see that Kentucky is really good this year. And number 10, I have Ole Miss. They went up 4 spots after beating Arkansas. In a game that I didn't love from them, but just looking at the rest of the field, I had these other teams and I said, I can't have these teams above Ole Miss. So there's my 10.
I got you. All right, a little different than mine, but I'll get into it. I got Georgia 1, Iowa 2, Cincinnati 3, Oklahoma 4, Alabama 5, Ohio State 6, 7, Penn State, 8, Michigan State, 9, Michigan, and I have Oregon on here. I don't know why I've been forgetting about Kentucky. I would put Kentucky at 10 as well. But I mean, pretty much the same as you, except for I have the Big Ten kind of at the bottom there, and you have SEC there. So not surprising. And I think the cool thing about this year is I think we'll get to see it all play out because a lot of these guys have to play each other. Well, all the Big Ten guys have to play each other. And I know I didn't make a prediction for the second half, but I guess I'll make this mine. I think Michigan falls off heavy in the second half. They played nobody. They got to play. I think they're at Michigan State. They do host Ohio State this year, but I mean, they need to win one before I'll ever think they can win one again. I got to say that. And then I think they play Penn State as well. So at Penn State, or no, they host Penn State as well. But yeah, so it's a top 10, but I think it's pretty kind of everyone has it. And then obviously like top 10, but then the 11 and 12 would have been the Ole Miss there and things like that. So now going forward to this big game this weekend. All right. I'll let you pick which one you want to start on, or if you have a different big game than any of those 5, feel free.
Different big game than those 5. Which 5?
If you have a different one to start with, go ahead. If not, we can just go with whatever one you want to start with.
Okay. I'll start with what I teased just a little bit earlier, which is Michigan State at Indiana. I saw the line on this game was like 4.5. And I was like, well, hold on. Like Indiana, I think they're 2-3 right now. Michigan State was 6-0. So right off the bat, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I started looking into it. To a Big Ten fan, this isn't any surprise, I'm sure. Indiana's 3 losses are Iowa, Penn State, and oh my word, I'm forgetting.
Starts with
Cincinnati.
a C.
No.
Yep.
Yes. Great. Awesome. I knew that. So 3 top
I had a
10
backwards
teams.
C. That's my bad.
Okay. 3 top 10 teams that they've lost to, by most people's opinion, I think. Maybe not everybody. And I looked a little bit into Indiana. Michael Penix Jr. might not play. That gives me almost more reason to like them because I haven't liked what we've seen from Penix this year. I'll admit, I was one of those people who, watching the Big Ten last year, I saw Indiana come this close to Ohio State, and I went, hey, Indiana's pretty good. And I just kind of kept that feeling. And then I went into this season, and I said, hey, that's the team that almost beat Ohio State. This Penix guy, I think he's pretty good. And I unfortunately did the research and found that I was wrong. So we'll see. I'm taking Indiana plus 4.5 points in this. I'm not sure how great I feel about that. I'd honestly like for Michigan State to win. But that's where I stand. How do you feel?
Okay, so you brought up a lot of things that I completely agree with. I saw this line as well. This is one of my picks. I've been on Michigan State all year. At first, I thought Michael Penix was playing, which I don't know. You kind of explained it. In my mind, I was like, awesome. Michael Penix is literally one of the worst college football quarterbacks in the FBS. He was the sole reason they lost to Cincinnati. He literally can't throw a slant route. It's crazy. Their backup is Jack Tuttle, who has had time. Who has played a little bit last year, and has had time. I think got in sometimes this year. Is actually when I looked at that, I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I like Michigan State anymore." But I think Indiana's a fraud. Yes, their losses have been good to good teams. Indiana has a gauntlet coming up, starting with Michigan State. They have to play Michigan at some point. I believe they have to play Ohio State. They have to play Ohio State next weekend. So this could be one of their first beatdowns, I think, that they take. I love Michigan State -4.5. I was going to take the total, one of the totals, but I just don't think Indiana's good. I think Indiana was okay last year. I think they got incredibly lucky by that first game last year when they beat Penn State when they shouldn't have. That ball was out of bounds. It shouldn't have counted. And then they got some. And then the other thing they did was, they stayed with Ohio State for 99% of the game, and people took a lot from that. I don't think Indiana's very good. So I love Michigan State, but I can also see why. Jack Tuttle is a pocket passer that's going to get they're going to try and get the run game going, and their defense isn't bad. So it'll be interesting to see. But I am opposite you. I like Michigan State a lot. All right. Why don't we go to Oklahoma State and Texas? This is a weird one. I know Oklahoma State and Texas in the past, you've been like, okay, this is going to be a lot of points. It's going to be crazy. Oklahoma State is actually is almost more of a defensive team this year, which is crazy. They have Spencer Sanders still at quarterback, but I think people thought he was going to be really good last year, and he kind of disappointed. So I think he's pretty much kind of even keeled this year. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, it's not going to be as many points as you think it is. But that's where I get you. I'm going in this one with the over 63.5. The spread, I think I put it on there. Spread Texas -4. That just seems like a trap to me. Simply because, like, you think after last week, Texas, a lot of people think they'll bounce back and be like, okay, we were good. We stayed with Oklahoma. I kind of think the opposite. I think, like, when they were up 23, that's when Texas peaked this year, possibly. And then they may be falling down. So I do like the over still, though. But I think you will be surprised. This shouldn't be won't be like a 63-55 game that you see in the Big 12 often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I have had kind of a difficult time totally understanding the Oklahoma State offense this year. Just not really knowing exactly what they're trying to do personnel-wise. And as we've kind of gone down the stretch, we've seen Texas make some adjustments. I don't want to say on the road and imply they're doing them in away games. But while they're moving, they're kind of making those little changes, figuring out what they need to do, the most obvious of which being at quarterback. So I know what I'm going to see from one offense, and I don't know entirely what I'm going to see from the other. And then at the same time, with the defenses, I know a little more about what I'm going to see from the Oklahoma State defense than I do from Texas. So it's tricky for me. It's really funny to me that Texas is favored by 4 points, considering I think the AP's got them like 12 and 21 right now.
12 and 25.
25. Okay. I think I like Texas. There's a reason I say it with that tone to my voice.
I feel you. I'm also, I'm gonna go ahead and rescind my over. I'm not taking the over. I'm going to go Texas -4. I just tricked my brain into thinking the other way, and now I'm smart back again. So I'm on Texas -4. I don't know why it made me do that, but I just think Texas is going to win. I think if they hand the ball off to Bijan Robinson 20 times, I think they win. But I'm also, this would not be one that I'm going, texting people being like, hey, you got to take Texas today. No, because that'll end in heartbreak probably. And I will be, and we all talk, me, Matt, and Matt Jacobowski, we text during the day during this college football Saturday, and I just have to believe that there can't be another way where I'll just be shocked again this weekend. But I'm sure it'll happen at some point, and I will join the group text with like capital letters, all fuck this, fuck that. So just be aware of that. I get very angry, and like I said, last week I went 3-2, but you went 4-0-1, so whatever. But yeah, I do think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be different. Oh shit. The actually over under in that, I don't know why I put that. The actual over under in that is 59.5, which still not going to take it. I was looking at the other pick I had. I'm still not going to take it. But yeah, like I said, I want Texas -4. That'll be one of my picks. All right, on to let's do TCU Oklahoma real quick, then we'll get to the two SEC games. I think Oklahoma is the more like this is what I thought. I think TCU's favored by dogs by 13.5, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think this is a letdown game for Oklahoma. I think after Caleb Williams came in, I think he's good, but he's also a freshman and he's going to make some freshman mistakes. So this will be his first true start. Would not shock me if he does great. It would not shock me if he has a lot of struggles. But I probably won't bet this game. I won't touch it. But if I were to, I would probably take TCU in the points. Just because with a freshman quarterback, I don't know how much Lincoln Riley's going to let him out of the reins. How much of the key he's going to give him. So if I were to take one, that would be it. I would take the TCU and the points. And I'm not touching it over under 64 because I just don't know enough about TCU.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The extent of what I know about TCU is named Zach Evans. So I don't want to talk too much because I know it's pretty obvious when I'm talking about something I don't know a lot about. But what I do know more about is this Oklahoma team. And I think that he's been there. But now that we're looking at them starting Caleb Williams, my question for Oklahoma is what kind of impact is that going to make for the locker room and for the rest of the offense? Is there maybe a sense of now that there's the new guy in town, hey, like we're a new team, we're really going to get this moving? I wonder about the intangible changes that are going to come from that. And I think if we see some really positive ones, then this will be the Oklahoma team that I'm saying could make the playoff this year. If he comes in and looks like a backup quarterback, then there's going to be some issues. I don't know enough about TCU to tell you whether or not they're the team to capitalize on that. But I think statistically, I don't know that there's as much of a chance that Oklahoma doesn't look a lot better in this game. So I would take Oklahoma to cover.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Max Duggan, TCU's quarterback, is questionable, so that's going to play a big impact. I would say if Max Duggan is not playing, I'm definitely not going to take that spread. Like I said, it's not one of my picks anyways, but I would not take that spread. Or I would take Oklahoma if Max Duggan was not playing. Or Max Duggan was not playing. All right, and then back down to the SEC. Before we get into our game of the week, Florida at LSU. Florida is favored by 12. It is at LSU. However, I don't think it matters anymore. I am done being tricked by LSU. They stink. I believe Keyshawn Boot is out. He is not playing. I think he's out for the rest of the season, possibly, which stinks because he's going to be a really good NFL player. But I'm done being tricked by LSU. This also isn't one of my picks, but if I was going to, I would take Florida -12. I just don't think. I mean, you don't even know who's going to step out on the field for LSU on Saturdays anymore. So, Orgeron can already. I mean, his ass is half burned off at this point. That seat is so hot. So, I mean, yeah, I'm done falling for LSU. You guys had me for like 2 years. No more. I'm all in on Florida -12.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will just say, I could not wait for the royal ass whooping that LSU is going to endure this week. 2019, Florida plays LSU almost as close as anybody. Late in that game, the points got put up, kind of similar to Notre Dame, Wisconsin's, where it didn't really tell the story. And then 2020, I wish we didn't have to talk about that game. Unfortunately, we get the shoe. We get the 53-yard field goal and like a foot of visibility. So I would love nothing more than to see Florida. For people who don't know, I am a Florida fan. For Florida to go into Death Valley and just pounce all over one of the worst LSU teams we've seen in a long time. And roster-wise, I think they have plenty of talent, but something just isn't clicking over there. And until they get a new coach, I don't think it's going to click. So I just hope Florida capitalizes. I imagine there's a lot of bad blood going into this game. That's easy to see. There's a lot of Florida players who circle this game, and that's always dangerous when you've got players circling a game and it's not a ranked team and there's no real like down the stretch implication like we saw last year with Alabama and who am I forget? Well, yeah, it was Alabama and LSU last year. And we knew LSU wasn't making too big of a splash, but we also knew that Alabama was going to do some damage because they felt like it. I hope that's what we see from Florida. But I'm easily taking Florida to cover.
Yeah, I think so as well. They didn't look good in their loss to Kentucky. I think Kentucky's a little better than people think. But you'll get into that in a sec.
I will.
Which might as well. Big game, our game of the week, which, I mean, the best game in this weekend probably by far. Maybe I do think Florida LSU will be interesting in the beginning. But the most popular game, so we all have to pick one of the sides on this. Me, Matt, and Matt have to pick one of the sides, either the spread or the total. But UK at Georgia, I think we forget about it. And obviously, when Penn State played Auburn, this was one of the times we remember what this kind of effect they can have. If this game is at Kentucky, it's a completely different game. It's like that would be the biggest crowd Kentucky probably has ever had. They would be the loudest they've ever had. But they have to go between the hedges, and Georgia's fans are going to be – they're always there. They're going to be loud. Like I said, we forgot about last year. Home field advantage makes a lot of an impact in college football with all the clap snaps and the silent snaps. I think Kentucky keeps it relatively close for a quarter, but then I think Georgia runs away with it, in my opinion. However, once again, I'm going to stick with what I know, and this one has worked for me all year. I'm going to take the under of 44.5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm about to just come out here and say it. I've got one of my picks this week. I've got Kentucky plus 21.5. And I don't know if the article's up yet, but when it is up, people will see I've actually predicted Kentucky to win this game outright. It's something I do with a lot of fear in my heart. But matchup-wise, I think this is a better matchup for Kentucky than much better than it was for Arkansas or, frankly, anybody who's faced Georgia this year. I think this game can play pretty well to Kentucky's strengths. And listen, a far from elite offense. They're not doing a ton special on that side of the ball. But they are averaging, I think it was like 6.3 yards a carry thus far in the season. Georgia hasn't faced a team who's done that. We talked a little bit about the Arkansas run game when they went into Georgia, but it's apples to oranges, the way Kentucky runs the ball. Passing, they're not getting anything done. I hate to say it. But I think all that needs to happen, and I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place a little bit, but if Kentucky can find a way to just score 2 or 3 times early, which is much easier said than done when we're talking about this Georgia team. But I think you put up 14 points in the first half. I don't know how well Georgia can respond. At some point during the season, Georgia is going to have to win the game on offense. They're going to have to catch up, and they're going to have to win with their offense. Are they capable of doing that? Probably. Do I think that it's dangerous to go assuming they can do that against Kentucky? Absolutely. So I like Kentucky to win. I see a plethora of scenarios where Georgia wins 44-0, 37-0, 21-0, 13-10. I see one scenario where Kentucky wins, and that's probably like 21-10. But I think that one could possibly be more likely than the rest combined.
I respect that. No, and it's 21 and a half is not a terrible line. It's a football number, so it's not that bad. I don't hate it. Like I said, I think it's a completely different game. This is in Lexington. It's not in Lexington. So we'll see. But we'll obviously keep everyone updated. But all right, let's get into our 5 picks. Matt, we already got you at UK plus 21 and a half. Throw me your other 4.
So, yeah, just give me 1 second. Let me get them pulled up here. So I've got Kentucky plus 21.5. I've got Arkansas minus 5.5, who Arkansas has been very good to me whenever I've picked them, so I'm going to keep doing it. Got them minus 5.5 against Auburn, which that game's at Jordan-Hare, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Indiana plus 5.5. That might have been 4.5. I'll go back. We'll check the lines in a bit. Tulsa minus 8.5 against University of South Florida. And then I've got UCF and Cincinnati over 56.
Okay. I like wow, I really like the all those picks. Okay. So mine are I got Miami, Florida, UNC over 63.5. I think UNC is capable on offense of putting up 50 of their own. I think it may be that happens because De'Aaron King is out for the rest of the year. I still like the over. I still think those teams' defenses just aren't very good. I don't think Miami's very good at all anyways, but obviously neither. I mean, UNC can't stop anyone. So I went with that. Like I mentioned earlier, I like Michigan State minus 4.5. And then I also like Texas minus 4 versus Oklahoma State at home. And then obviously I said the UK versus Georgia. I like the under of 44.5. And then my last play of the night will be Arizona State versus Utah. It's a pick 'em. I'm going with Arizona State. I believe it's at Utah, but Utah basically done the opposite of what I thought they would do this year with BYU. I thought BYU would be bad this year and Utah would come back up on the rise. It's been opposite. Utah is still very bad, and BYU sneakily could sneak into the top 10 rather shortly. So yeah, those are all our 5 picks, and then I have Matt Jacobowski's. Let me pull those up real quick just so we can get that going. Okay, he's going head to head with me. He's got the over of 40.5 in the UK versus Georgia. Nevada minus 13.5, Florida minus 12.5, Alabama minus 17.5, Nebraska minus 3.5. So he's going with all favorites except for UK and UGA. That's the over 44.5. Well, all right. So make sure everyone, your article will be up, or Matt's article will be up later today. I have to go get a new license so I can start recording ads on this stuff so we can make some money. But I have to get my license, and his will be up this afternoon. I will tweet it out. I will tweet it out, Facebook it. It's got all his previews for the games, the big games. He's been very good with the pass. Like I said, he's leading our competition, so I would not fade him. If you're going to fade anyone, I would probably fade me. But also tomorrow, so like I was talking about earlier, I covered the FCS exclusively last spring. It was my thing. I did power rankings every week. I did a lot of interviews with some of the bigger FCS guys. I know a couple of people. It was a really fun experience. We're at the part in the FCS season where we kind of know who's good and we kind of know who's bad. That's the cool thing about the FCS. There's about 10 to 20 teams that are very, very good every year, and then the rest are okay to bad. Unfortunately, FCS lines don't come out until Saturday morning. So on Saturday morning, I will tweet it out. I will also probably put up an article either on Flurry or Back Sports, probably Flurry. And I will give out some FCS picks. Because those are going to be a lot easier to gauge, especially for me this week. But yeah, I'll be giving out some FCS picks. I would recommend people start voting on, or not voting, betting on the FCS. It's sometimes a lot easier than the regular FBS. Matt, great job today. Thanks for coming up to the big leagues. How do you think you played? Good?
10-4-1.
We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to hear about it. And then also, hopefully we have more upsets this week. I'd love it. But hopefully in the college football is delivered every single weekend thus far, except for maybe week 0 and maybe week 1 as well. But every weekend's been exciting. So I think we're going to see another exciting weekend. And then also on Sunday, me and Tom will be back in the studio with me. We will be doing our Fantasy Sunday starting at 11 a.m. We'll go to kick. Browns don't play till 4, which is bullshit, but whatever. They don't play till 4. So I might be able to stay on and answer questions if people have them for fantasy, gambling, or daily fantasy. But other than that, we went a little long today. Usually happens when I have a new one-to-one guy on. We always go long because we just talk about things. We'll try and cut it down next time. And we also did our mid-season awards today, so took up an extra 15 minutes. But I assume Matt will be back next Friday.
Yes, sir.
And then, like I said, be on the lookout for us three, me, Matt, and Matt, to maybe find a time next week or maybe once a month, whatever we can do for us to get on and just, go into a full hour of actually just college football, whether it be the NFL draft coming up or whatever. We'll have some good topics, but we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. Actually, not next week, the week after next week, because that when Matt gets done with his job. So, all right. Well, hopefully everyone enjoyed this. As always, downloaded. It will be be able to download and listen to it later on Spotify. I just got to get it up there, which I will do when I come back from the BMV, which I could be at for 17 hours. Who knows? But any last words, Matt?
Last week, I told everyone to go watch the Arkansas Ole Miss game. I said it'd be close. Go watch the Florida LSU game because they'll be angry.
Wow, that's just, yeah. All right. What a way to end it. All right, let's rock, guys.